Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world in 30 answers. Discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I'm sitting out in the beautiful vineyards of Prie Winery in Lodi with co-owners, John and Lisa Gash. John and Lisa, welcome, and tell me a little bit about Prie Winery.
So Prie Winery is a startup that we envisioned in 2008, 2009, and we started the winery in 2010. And our goal was to look at wine varietals and wine techniques that were more naturally expressive rather than the California expression. So our goal was to showcase some of the unique vineyards around the area. And we started out actually as many wines or winemakers do in warehouses, secreted away in these vast complexes of asphalt and warehouses. And we actually started cut our teeth in Livermore, California. And after several years, we migrated out to Lodi because of all the great vineyards and wineries that are out here. And the possibility of this area is just tremendous.
Wow. So we're sitting here on your estate. How many acres do you have? And are you doing exclusively estate fruit or sourcing?
So with the size of the vineyard, we have 10 acres. Mm-hmm. 9 are planted, and the other acres dedicated to the facility and the house that we live on. So we live on property. We do have small vineyards that we work with across town that we've planted or have influenced the owners to plant for us, and we manage for them. And that one of the showcases we'll see tonight or this afternoon is a Counois. So the first Counois that we've been working with through this area. So we do source out from select vineyards that we like.
Yeah, I get to taste the wines. Sorry to everyone listening. So what types of wines are you making, and what's your total case production?
So our case production runs somewhere between 2,000 and 1,500, and it varies from year to year depending on what our outflow is and what our inventory is. Varietal-wise, we don't stay to one charted, kind of boxed region. We are somewhat distracted, so we run around looking at all these vineyards, and so we have somewhat 13 plus varietals that we have on site, ranging from German varietals like Dornfelder to Spanish varietals that have just emerged from the market like Mencía. You'll be tasting the second release of Mencía. There's 3 acres of that. We have 1.2. Wow. You'll also be trying Counois, which is pretty rare out here. Lodi, with its very Mediterranean climate, we do get a chance to grow some spectacular grapes, and then we'll be looking at some classic Barberas and other varietals that at this moment kind of escapes my brain because we're sitting here in the shade and I think I've lost it.
On the estate, we also have Cab Sauvignon, we have Cab Franc, we have a white called Picpoul Blanc, we have Grenache, Mourvedre, and we also planted blindly a varietal called Prieto Picudo, which we'll get our first vintage of this year.
Wow.
It's a Spanish varietal that is often blended with Mencía, and it sounds like it will make a really good one on its own, so we chose to give those 2 a shot.
Wow, the weird and wonderful world of wine. And last general question is, where are your wines available? Are they available in different markets or direct to consumer?
So we do mainly direct to consumer, but we have we had distribution before everybody shut down in Reno, Southern California, and parts of Modesto in the Bay Area. So you can find us in certain spots, but we haven't been back to our hosts for a while because of the shutdown.
But you're mostly direct to consumer.
Yeah, for the most part.
We're mostly California.
Yeah,
okay.
85% direct to the consumer.
Okay. So this is a question for both of you to go back in your memories, but what is your first memory relevant to wine?
I'm the one who's responsible for starting on this journey. Mm-hmm. And we used to live up in Washington State, and that was where I developed my love of wines. And moving down here, we moved to Livermore Valley, which is also wine country. So having lived in 2 different wine countries, started learning about wine and experiencing a love of it, and then decided it would be cool to learn how to make it. And that started the addiction, which then spread over to him, and he took over, and he's the thought behind Prie Winery. I was content to just make it for me and friends, and he wanted to expand it and just share it with the world.
So, John, for you, do you have a memory that predates this sort of living in wine country?
That's a good question, and I think Lisa encapsulated quite a bit that when we were in Washington, this was pre-Washington wine explosion, so we're talking back in 90, 95? So there was very few wineries back there, and the idea that really kind of sparked us all was the creativity that went into it. Yet the science and the process in which you create was just fascinating. Given the backgrounds that we have, that creativity just kind of vectored into what we're doing now.
So no drinking as children?
Not that we want to admit to our parents.
Fair enough.
That would raise questions about where it came from, and then we don't want to go there.
So getting into wine and drinking a lot of wine, and as you developed your palates and your interest, is there a particular wine you drank that stood out to you? One of those really memorable wines that either set you on a path on a certain variety you like, or a style of wine, or just wine in general? An aha moment, I should say.
I would say for me, it was like a Gary Farrell Pinot Noir.
One of the wineries that I really liked a lot, because we would travel around the area. You might remember Four Vines out of Paso, and that just in the back shop of the deli was just a fantastic. The dynamics that were included in that space was just something that really just got our minds thinking in a different direction. And we hold a lot of our thoughts about what we saw in some of these smaller wine startups that we took forward with us, and we kind of evolved in our own interpretations.
So you have an eclectic range of wines that you make and grapes that you work with. If we were to come into your homes and go into your home and go into your cellar, I'm not asking how large it is. It could be a tiny little fridge, but how eclectic is your collection, and what would we find in there? From what countries and what grapes? Is there one or two things that you're just obsessed with?
Which is interesting. We've got wines from Oregon. We have Washington wines. A lot of California distribution from Southern California up to the Northern California, Santa Rosa area. Some wines coming in from South America, just for curiosity of seeing what's happening there. We used to have New Zealand, but I think we drank all those.
That happens.
We tend to be, we see these shiny baubles all over the place, and we can't help but collect them. So we have things dating back to 87. Ooh. Bottles of wine from 87, 90s, a lot of 90s, some early 2000, and all the way up into obviously modern wine.
So a nice range of West Coast regions. Is there something you've opened recently that drank really well? Anything you drank?
Oh, let's see. What did we last have that was really good?
That winery from Oregon.
The Brigadoon?
Brigadoon.
Oh, yeah. One of our trips up to Oregon, we discovered a small winery called Brigadoon in Junction City, something like that. Their Pinots are very light, and what we noted on our trips were that the Pinots that were coming out of Oregon recently are bigger. Like they're making them oaky, and they're making them heavier, larger, almost as if they were trying to pull out a cab out of their Pinot, which we thought was interesting. And our view is we love the lightness and the floral qualities that you can get in a Pinot, and Brigadoon stuck true to that floral quality, and we just really enjoyed their wines.
I'll have to look. I've never heard of them. I'll have to seek it out. So I'm curious, you work with so many different grapes, and clearly you don't follow one single path, but do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
It's a good question. I tend to and I love Barbaros. And there's a particular Barbera vineyard that we're going to be showing you today that I fell in love with. The gentleman Charlie is an 87 plus, or he stopped counting after 87 years old. He still farms it. Completely neglected vineyard. You would never put this on a postage stamp, but the quality of fruit that comes out of this vineyard is just outstanding. We always have to go early in the morning to pick it because we'd be inundated by leafhoppers after sunrise, but the fruit is just utterly fantastic. It shows you what you can do without having to manipulate, and what the land produces, and to respect what we do. And to a certain degree, that has been kind of, he inspired us to do a lot of the things that we did by what we saw his vineyard speaking to us.
So a roundabout sense of like perfection, just in its odd way of not looking perfect and yet giving you something of beauty.
Right.
So here's a controversial question. What's your opinion on wine critics and scores?
I think that wine critics should follow their palate and not the palate of others. And they should speak to what they see, what they believe, and worry less about what others think of them, and be able to convey that information as well.
Right, because, we believe that the one great rule of wine drinking or wine tasting is drink what you like. Because everybody's at a different place in their journey in wine drinking, so don't make fun of someone who's just starting out, because we were all there.
Yeah.
And we just happened to find a passion about it and continued and kept going till we got full circle on our journey, and now we love everything, right? So it's focusing on what you like, but then be honest about what you like too. And if you're going to be doing points on something, saying this is great, this is my palate, this is where I am in my wine journey, and those of you who are in the same place are going to love these wines.
Mm-hmm. So on that note of drinking what you like, as everyone should, how do you feel when it comes to food and wine pairing? Do you think there are rules to follow? And even if there aren't rules to follow, how do you approach pairing food with wine, or wine with food?
So I would say that there are definitely great combinations that if you pair a specific food with a specific wine, the two of them together make something even better. Mm-hmm. I think, my opinion, I've rarely found them. They exist, but there's a lot of searching. Think about how many food combinations there are out there. Just in one recipe, there are 50 or more variations on that recipe, right? You get an apple pie. There's so many. There's with cheese. There's without cheese. There's with sour apples. There's with sweet. It's all in how you want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Those variations are going to change what that pairing with the wine is. Now you take the wine and you have a different winemaker. You have a different soil. You have a different climate. The wine is going to be different. So to say that, apple pie pairs beautifully with Sauv Blanc, I'm just pulling those out of the air, is great.
John shaking his head going, no, I don't think so.
I know, but I know, it probably isn't. Well, okay, say with a Vermentino or a Gewürztraminer.
Gewürztraminer.
So which would be great, but then John does a dry Gewürztraminer, which might not be perfect with the apple pie. But if you did the apple pie with the cheese, then it might work. So finding the perfect combinations is really hard. Mm-hmm. They're out there. And when you happen on them, it's just like finding that perfect wine that's like hits your palate right when you're at that place in your journey. That's what I think gets us all so excited about wine.
Right.
Really.
Absolutely. So do you think, John, to add on that while we're all achieving that aha moment and finding perfection in the pairing, that harmony is something we aspire to, are there rules that you look for or things you look like? If you're preparing a dish, how do you decide which of your wine's going to open, or do you know what wine you're going to have and then create the dish?
So the question is, do I start with the wine or do I start with the recipe? Or do I just kind of iterate over both and somehow we reach a happy medium?
Exactly.
That's a good question. I think one of the aspects that when we talk about pairing that we forget, and that is our emotions and our emotional state that we're in. And so while it might be a hot, summer day or a cool spring day, emotionally how I approach that that meal or how I choose that wine is very much that part of the aspect. And like these spring days, I love to have a lighter red, very little tannins, some brightness to it. So I may gravitate towards like a Carignan, a young Carignan, or Counois that you'll be trying, Grenache, an early Grenache, or if I are in the white space, I love the more acidic, the more floral whites like we see in Picpoul Blanc, a bright Roussanne, or even
so
Sauv
many
Blanc.
choices.
Yeah. So we cook, and I tend to do, when I do a lot of cooking, I do. Well, if I have the wine, it kind of tends to create a huge gravitational attraction to what happens on the plate, and I will oftentimes modify the recipes drastically to make sure that wine fits, because that's what's in my mind, what's emotionally attached to is that particular wine. So yes, I guess so. The wine does greatly influence.
So based on emotions, quick answers: red, white, or rosé?
Yes.
Red for me.
Oh. Still or sparkling?
Still.
Not that hard. So for somebody who hasn't tasted your wine yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
Let's let Lisa go, because I just lost my voice.
So his wines tend to be overall very smooth, very fruit forward, very aromatic, all distinct. So there's no formula. He makes wines that are vineyard specific. 100% vineyard, 100% varietal. So you get the terroir, you get the essence of what can be made from that winery. And John is really good at making the wines bright and interesting and complex.
And so
that's
I got
a nice
my voice.
selling point.
Yeah. Boy, I better not say much, or I'm going to ruin this.
Well, let me ask you a question that you can tie into this. But if space aliens were to land here on your property right now, which of your wines would you want to present to them? Welcome them with?
Well, that's interesting.
I would do Cab Franc, but
really? Yeah, no, the Cab Franc is outstanding. I think I love Grenache, though. I think one of the really neat things about our Grenache is we've got 3 clones out there, and we field blended out, and it's not your typical Grenache. The clones that we have are much lighter skinned, so the transference of color comes across as a heavy rosé in presentation, but the flavors are just this
strawberry,
beautiful floral and fruit flavors that are just nuanced, and once we get them tied to that, then we'll take the spaceship and run away.
So you live here on your property. You were saying at the beginning you live here on 10 acres, 9 planted. You spend time, I'm sure, with your vines on a daily basis. Do you find that from vintage to vintage you see a lot of variation, or is it more nuanced? What do you see here in Lodi and specifically here?
So, certain vineyards are fairly consistent. I think that's, showing, a lot of dedication to the growers in that area. We're experimentalists at heart, so we may some year run a smaller canopy ratio to fruit. We may have, drop a significant portion of the fruit to see what the characteristics of those effects are in our particular sub-AVA and our soil selection. So we're running experiments. There are certain vineyards that we've kind of nailed, like our Cab, that we don't vary too much, but all the Cab Francs and the Grenaches and the Mourvèdres, we're experimenting every season to see, what characteristics draw out, and we're getting there. We're spiraling to what we think. So in another 20 to 30 years, I think we'll have it down.
But it sounds like because we have a relatively consistent climate here, that vintage variation is not so grandiose on a regular basis, that allows you to experiment more within that.
It helps that we have more or less a predictable season, and so while we may get some weeks with excessive heat or a bit of a chill towards the end, we can, through understanding where the acids are and where the flavors are. We can pick to be fairly consistent. But like we were saying, being
He's a scientist.
we're trained scientists, so we know the number of variables, and we know we can't hold all the variables constant. So we're always playing
He
with
loves
the
to
variables.
experiment.
Okay,
So that's
so
part
you're
of the winery space.
so you're a scientist. So now you're going to laugh at me at my question, but do you go into the vines and talk to them?
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah,
what do you say to your vines?
We talk and encourage them to grow. What the heck are you doing?
How many tons an acre are you going to have this year?
We had problems with you last year. We really need to correct your behavior. So all sorts of things, from parental to praising. It all runs the gamut.
It's good to know that even with science that you talk to nature. So, and then the last thing, have you guys established any sort of traditions that you do at the start of harvest? Anything that is part of your winery lifestyle?
Not per
No?
se. We don't do any kind of
Champagne over the
anointing
first.
vines or
We're usually just running to catch up because it's just the two of us primarily who are doing everything.
Oh.
We're wearing all the hats. And so it's just, for us, it's just the cycle. So there's really no start of harvest. It's like something else ends and then, now we have time to start working on harvest. I think it's
yeah.
more
So
that.
every year we say, okay, this is what our target's going to be, but we never hold to it because somehow we discover like 5 different varietals or vineyards that we, oh my gosh, let's go try this, and which extends harvest out quite a bit. But I think that's part of the joy and that we like is that exploration and discovery.
So obviously you got into wine after a career and didn't necessarily have this vision as children, but when you were little, what did you both want to be when you grew up? And did you do that in your first job?
I wanted to be an airline stewardess or a pilot. That was me. But no, unfortunately, I was too short to do the pilot school. Back in the day, they didn't have adjustable seats. I don't know if they do now or not. But I couldn't reach the pedals. I know, right? It was sad. It was just sad. I actually applied to the Air Force Academy and did the physical, and they said, sorry, you're too short. Seriously.
That's a very interesting,
That was
odd reason to be
I know, right?
kept out.
But hey, it is what it is.
And then you worked in science?
And now I'm a project manager, so I worked with government for the most part, or financial projects mostly, and yeah.
And John, what did you want to be when you were a kid? After the superhero phase?
After the garbage man, superhero. I don't know. I was always inquisitive, and I remember you go to the guidance counselors and you take all these questionnaires and they say, and it turned out to be a lawyer, and the guidance counselor said, "You don't want to be a lawyer." I'm like, "No, I don't want to be a lawyer." Since that career choice door was closed and nailed shut, math and computer science was actually the direction I went, which is interesting and kind of leads to kind of our inquisitiveness and our kind of willingness to kind of explore and create.
So when you have free time, what do you guys do? What do you like to do in your free time?
Besides sleeping.
I read. I read a lot.
Yeah, we do read.
We read.
We tinker on the projects on the house, and we just there's more things to do than you have ever imagined. Let's try this. Let's do this, and so we're learning welding. We're learning how to do sustainable agriculture,
Permaculture,
and
foodscaping. Yeah, we're interested in all of the things you can do to save the environment and to try to just make it a better place. So that's kind of what we're focusing on lately. We're people of many hobbies and many interests, so we're looking forward to someday retiring so that we can start pursuing them. The problem is every time we find a hobby, we get
becomes
into
a career.
it. Well, no, but you get into it and it spawns off another 7 hobbies, and so that we're never going to be able to do them all. But yeah, that is the one that we're more interested in right now, is trying to do what we can to make the world a better place.
I like that. It's a good, lofty mission. On the rare nights or hopefully not rare, when you plan a romantic evening, what sort of wines set the mood for a romantic evening? And I'm curious if you're going to have the same answer. So, Lisa, what kind of wines would you want for a romantic evening?
Lodi, the one grape that we can't grow very much here is probably the one I would pick, should be a Pinot Noir.
Okay.
Just because I can't have that here every day, right? Here I can have, Lodi has 100 varietals, 100 different varietals that we grow here. Pinot Noir is not one that grows well here.
Uh-huh.
There are a few, but if I want a good one, I've got to go somewhere else. So that's probably the one I sort of treat myself to. It's something that I can't get every day.
What about you?
Well, that's an interesting question. If we're going to set the evening, I'd probably, if it's a warmer weather, I'd probably do an IPA. If it got a little darker, colder, a lager would be...
It's romantic for him.
Have you heard that it takes a lot of beer to make good wine?
Yes, but I guess it also takes a lot of beer to think you made your wife happy.
Well, there you go. Well, there's that. Actually, the one that he made that makes me happy is a Primitivo that he left in the barrel for 10 years. And that we just bottled last summer.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot to do with it. So
the angel share was much larger than it normally is, and that is probably my favorite wine ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we do experiments, not only with the varietals, but obviously with, what happens in the barrel and what you do with it.
So when you look back at your life, a lot of us are told we're given advice by people for our careers and our lives at various points that we carry with us, mantras. Do you have a particular piece of advice that was given to you or a mantra you try to live by? And do you remember where you got it or from whom?
I do. Spent a lot of time in church as a child, and it was do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That was my mantra. Mm-hmm. The golden rule.
God taught you that one.
God taught me that one, and my parents made sure that it sunk in.
Top that one, John.
All right, I will. So I do have a couple mantras. I don't know exactly where they came from. One is, and it's always been, hopefully we don't have to edit for certain
It's probably Monty Python.
Yeah, well, it's not quite Monty Python, but is that, you betcha, which means, don't have the fear of succeeding, and that, go out and try it. The other one that is oh shoot, or higher, oh shit, and that's the fear of being okay to fail, and those two drive me. So a lot of times we're afraid to be successful, as much as we're afraid to be shown to not be successful. So both of those create tensions in what we do and what I do. So another way to say it is runs with scissors, right?
Okay. So if you could give a piece of advice to our listeners, what would you say to them?
There's only one finite amount of time that you have. And do and enjoy every minute of it, because you can never take one back.
Yeah, and I would say even further is appreciate the moment that you're in, because there's no guarantee that you'll have more moments. And this year, I think, brought that home to everyone, right? You don't know if there's going to be a tomorrow. And when you're younger, you think that time is never going to end. You're never going to run out of time. You can do whatever you want, right? And your parents tell you, do what you want to do, follow your passion, and then you follow your passion, they're going, what? You're going to major in art? What are you thinking? You can't survive on that, right? But so there are conflicting things out there. And it's really just enjoy the moment you're in. Use that to springboard to the next moment you're going to love, and just follow your passions that way, but do it in a thoughtful way, not just hopping from one disaster to another.
So when you guys look back at your careers, it can be previous to starting the winery, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements to date?
Let's see, for me, I had a project 10 years ago that was a $10 million project. It was the only one that they were spending discretionary funding on. Had a lot of visibility, a lot of very high-level people were watching it. I brought it in $1 million under budget, on time, and with no major issues. So that would be my proudest achievement. And I got a coffee mug as a reward for doing that. So there.
A little bit of cynicism steps in on that, but
no good deed remains unpunished, right?
Hey, they recognized you.
yeah.
Still have it.
Yeah.
What about you, John?
I mean, we all do things that are great achievements, career-wise, and we see rewards, but kind of along the things that, kind of we talked about what we're doing here. I guess the biggest thing that I kind of, milestone was, we take a lot. When we do careers, we're taking, we're expecting things for us. I started, after working in the industry for quite a while, I started teaching at San Jose State. And I think the greatest reward was being able to pass on that knowledge and encourage others, the future generation, to do, what they want for them to reach their dreams. And that, being able to help others, I think was probably more defining than any salary increase or raise or plaque that you get, because you're affecting others. And I think that, for me, was the most monumental or impressionable state for us.
That's
And I
beautiful.
benefited from that too, because he stopped lecturing me when he got to lecture his students
Okay.
to get it out of his system. It was a win-win.
So another question for both of you, but we're sitting here at a table, wine on the table, your wines. If you could imagine sharing a bottle of your wine with anyone from any walk of life, living or deceased, who would you want that? Who would you want to be sitting here drinking with you?
Probably Thomas Coyne, because he was an influential winemaker for us when we were just starting out in Livermore. He passed quite a few years ago, but we would talk to him, and I think it would be really neat to say where we are now versus where we were, and to reflect and thank him for that inspiration he gave us.
He was who taught me how to make wine. That's where I learned, yeah. And then I, showed John participated in all of that with me, and then he was more self-taught beyond that. So he took that basic knowledge that I had, and then he made it into, much more. I would probably share it with Bill Gates. He would be the one I would choose, which is kind of the geek answer, which I would expected him to come up with that. But
Well, maybe he'll listen to this and then come out to
maybe,
Lodi.
huh? Yeah. I appreciate that he took something, made something from nothing, and then took that and started his foundation and is doing what he can to solve world problems that world governors, people who are like
Leaders.
presidents and leaders, thank you, haven't been able to solve, or haven't even tried to solve, but that need to be addressed. So
I like that. You're rethinking. No, I think it's beautiful, your
I
mentor.
was thinking of the retort to Bill Gates.
So,
But maybe we shouldn't put that
so
on.
I have a question, a fill in the blank answer. A table without wine is like
a book without an ending.
Oh, interesting. A book analogy is kind of interesting.
It's really
kind of
good.
interesting.
It's my thing. It's my jam.
Okay. It's like a book without a story arc.
It's like
right?
a program without a purpose.
Program.
Computers.
We write those all the time. but it's, when we reread, there's always multiple story arcs within the book, right? That's, for instance, the path that the book is, or characters are going. So the wine is one of those arcs within the story. So
without it,
you
you're
don't
lacking
have-
the story.
Yeah, the structure within the story.
Okay, we're almost finished. I'm going to ask you. You're going to a deserted island. What 3 wines do you take with you? Any 3 wines you want, or varieties, or regions, or.
Does the island have water?
It's your island. It's your island. It can have whatever you want. It can be ice cold or tropical.
Okay.
This is not punishment.
No. It's just kind of asking the framing of the question to make sure there's ways we can get off of it. Yeah. Surprisingly, I would actually pull like a crisp Vermentino or a Picpoul Blanc or something has that refreshing characteristic. I wouldn't pick heavy because I'm imagining tropical.
That's one.
Yeah.
You want to fill in the others?
Yeah,
because you're going to be sharing apparently.
I know. Yeah. I would probably want to try one of those storied French wines that they made 60 or 80 years ago that have yet to be opened. I would want to just sample something like that.
That's because we'll need vinegar for the vegetables and the fruit that we find on that side.
Such a pessimist.
I know, right? And then I would take a bottle of maybe either his Primitivo or his 15 Cab. Those are my favorites.
Okay,
that
well,
he makes.
Think about that for a second. And here's this little game I didn't warn you about at the beginning that we play where we pair a little wine with music because music makes us feel a certain way, as does wine. So based on some of the wines you make that you talked about that I will be soon tasting, pair it with a song, a genre, an artist, be as specific or general as you want. So start with your Picpoul Blanc.
Picpoul Blanc. Wow.
John is deferring to you, Lisa.
Yeah, I am.
Picpoul Blanc would be, let's see, that's a tough one. Something by Celine Dion.
Ooh, okay.
What's a good one? I don't know.
Do you disagree? Do you have another artist in mind?
Who would you
or
pick?
genre?
Not John Denver.
No. I only play the really bad songs to annoy people. The Picpoul Blanc has got a little bit of tartness, sassiness. I mean, we can pull out of some of the older spaces. We can go with a little bit of Debbie Harris, maybe.
Blondie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe. Yeah.
Call me.
Yeah.
Okay. See, you're getting it. We're getting this. Okay, your Counois. You can describe the wine to.
Yeah. So with Counois, it's kind of just this really light, just really complex space.
Almost a cotton candy, just a beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, but it's kind of so new, maybe I would go with a little bit of Modest Mouse, or maybe pick up, some Vampire Weekend, some of the new stuff. The original stuff, excuse me, not the new stuff that they put out.
What about the Primitivo you love, Lisa?
Queen. It would have to be something by Queen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or balladish.
Bohemian Rhapsody probably would be. Yeah.
Do you disagree? Do you have another idea?
That's fine. I would work with that. Queen would work. Queen would work definitely. Yes, it's an early Queen. Definitely.
And two more. Your Dornfelder. A lot of people aren't familiar with.
Yeah, Dorn.
Dorn's like blueberry pie without the crust.
Yeah.
But with a little tannin.
Yeah, we can jump. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. It's almost...
Maybe it's like a country and western song where
it
you
could be
have
country
like
western.
the fried chicken and the picnic with the pie in the end and the Dornfelder.
Yeah.
That works?
So something like that. She, what's the one where he talks about how
Lady
she
Anna,
thinks my tractor's
Lady
sexy?
A, I guess we can have to say Lady A these days.
Okay.
Not Annabelle, because
Yeah, Lady A. Yeah. Okay, and then last, your Cabernet Franc.
Oh, Cab Franc. Cab Franc goes with Mexican food like amazingly. So think like a not a mariachi band. I wouldn't.
No.
I probably wouldn't do that.
Grateful
but,
Dead.
Okay.
Because it would be perfect.
Fantastic. You gonna go with that? Okay.
I'll let him get away with that.
But or we can do some little bit of Baroque would work too if you want to kind of go to the opposite end of the music spectrum into a little bit of classical, just sitting back, sipping on the Franc and just listening and just really pumping up that.
I was thinking that song. I don't know who sings it, but it's "How Far Is Heaven."
You don't want to hear me sing,
I'm not very good at that one. It's half of it is in Spanish and half of it is in English. That'd be the perfect one, I think, for that.
Okay. Well,
you know the one I'm talking about, right? Yeah. You're struggling with it too. It's a Spanish band or a Latin American band.
Well,
Los
Los Lobos?
Los Lobos.
Oh, Los Lobos.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, Los
Maybe.
Lobos.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good job. I'm impressed.
Okay.
I'm really impressed. You know, you'll have to drink these wines with some music and see if it worked. But just to finish, we all want to travel to wine regions. I'm here in Lodi. I'm curious, what wine region is at the top of your bucket list?
The French Rhone.
Okay.
Region, yeah. You know, I would like to go to Chile. I want to see what, you know, we hear a lot about it. We hear, you know, some of the higher elevation. They're doing a lot of great things with respect to, you know, kind of environmental protection. And I want to see what they're doing. I want to taste it. I want to kind of experience a different perspective, a newer perspective. Not old world, not U.S., but, you know, kind of what they've learned from us.
Well, I love that. So you have 2 trips to plan,
Yes.
which, you know, both sound great. And if someone wanted to plan a trip here to Lodi, how can they come and visit you here at Prie Winery?
That's easy.
Yes,
Well, let's see. You can. There's a lot of Airbnbs. There are some that are out in the country. If they have RVs, they can stay at Clinker Brick across
Harvest
the street
Host,
through
yeah.
Harvest Host and just stagger on over and stagger on back.
So you have a tasting room open 7 days a week?
We have a tasting room open
Friday,
3.5
Saturday,
days a
Sunday,
week.
and then Thursday by appointment.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. And so they can always email us, you know, at geeky@priewinery.com, or give us a call, you know, and or we have a reservation system. But you know, most of the people just call us and talk to us.
If we were open 7 days a week, we would never get the wine bottled
That's
or
true.
crushed or distilled.
It's just you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you taking the time since it's just the 2 of you and I got both of you at the same time. So this is wonderful. Yes, your website, in case people want to either buy wine or make an appointment, is?
Priewinery.com.
Perfect. Well, John and Lisa, thank you for joining us on Wine Soundtrack.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Now we can break into the goldfish that's
Yes.
sitting on the table. That's been torturing
Let's go drink.
All right.
All right. We're going to get some
Wine.
glasses.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.